Excellent. All right. Well,
Right.
thank you, everybody. Welcome to our January 2026 Science Leadership Academy Middle School Home and School Association meeting. Today, we are going to just do a quick round of introductions. We'll have some updates from the HSA, and then Ms. Play is here to talk about mental health and wellness with the school community. So we have two board members here in addition to myself. I'm Andrew Stover, president of the board, and I'll hand it over to Katie first.
And I'm Katie O'Malley, and I am treasurer of the board. And I have a daughter, Elsa, in Phoenix. And no, that's wrong. Zephyr in 7th grade.
Yeah. Oh, and I should say my son is Leo in 7th grade, and we live in South Philly. And Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm the secretary, and I have a 6th grader named Ren, and I also live in South Philly.
Great. And Eleanor. Oh.
Hi, I'm a new parent to the school. My son is JJ, and he's in 5th grade.
Awesome. Welcome. And what neighborhood are you in?
West Philly.
Nice, good. Whew. At least this is not a pure South Philly SLAMS meeting. That's good.
Eleanor, JJ, right? You said?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. We've been working together. I love him. He's a delight.
I'm thinking about my response to your first question, and I think that's one of the pieces I got.
We prepared in the spring to have a lot of little gifts. That's what I'll tell you.
Okay.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for joining, and don't feel obligated to be on camera if it's not convenient for you. In December, we did a teacher appreciation lunch. I think since the last time we met, that's the last major event we had. And of course, picture days have kicked off with the picture day, knock on wood, at the end of next week as well for the 5th and 6th graders on the 29th. Upcoming for the rest of the year, we have a spring dance in May. We'll have swag sales in April. Spell check, didn't catch that. We'll be doing board recruitment next month. So Eleanor, if you want to join our board as the 6th grade parent rep, we would love to have you, and other roles we may have opening up. We'll do our elections in April. We're going to have 2 more general meetings this year. In February, we've decided on a meeting where we'll have some of the teachers and Principal Boyle, and we'll be talking about the themes at SLAMS this year, because we realize that's something that a lot of parents don't know about. We have 2 teacher and staff appreciation lunches coming up, one in May for Teacher Appreciation Week and one in June at the end of the year to celebrate the end of the year. And then, of course, the Stepping Up ceremony. Every contribution helps support all of these wonderful events that we do to support our teachers and students. So this is how, we need your help. For those of you watching on the recording and those of you who are here who are already helping, join our board next year. We have a very, I think, productive and even often fun board. We meet once a month, meetings less than an hour. People do some work outside of those meetings to help. We could use some help organizing the spring swag sale, planning and supporting the spring dance, and for the teacher appreciation days. And now we are very glad to be here with Ms. Pillay to talk about mental health and wellness. You can drop your questions in the chat if that's more comfortable, or use the raise hand function, but I think we have a small enough group that we'll just have a conversation. There are no silly questions. However, I will say it's very important on this topic that we respect our students' privacy and that we not talk about specific students or personal situations, that sort of thing, that we respect their confidentiality. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn things over to Ms. Pillay.
Thank you. So I'm Miss Charlene, as your kids would know it, And I wasn't sure how we were going to start this meeting. And at first I was like throwing out the question, but what I'll do is first I'm just going to, because this is being recorded, that I think it might be really nice for families to know what my role is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I have a very interesting role at SLAMS because we all know me as a founding counselor, but there's a lot of behind the scenes things that I do that, sometimes parents know, sometimes parents don't know. I don't do them, full time all the time. Sometimes there's seasons for it, So I'm going to first throw that out my what I give to our new staff members, actually, as far as what my role is, so that, that families understand what I do there at SLAMS. So let me see. Am I allowed to share this?
Yeah, you should be allowed to share.
Okay. All right. Just bear with me so I don't.
Yeah,
I'm going to make sure that I do this correctly. Oh, wait. Here we go. I am going to start off with this slide here. Okay, there we go. So there is that's my jam. If in case people haven't been introduced to that, I really like gardening. And I infuse gardening in every area I can. I have run a gardening mini course. I am currently using gardening as a technique I use when I'm working with different students. I'm, really, really trying to work on, infusing like the ideas of nurturing with more of the, I say therapeutic type of activities. So you're saying,
if you hit the slideshow button at the top, it'll be a little easier for us.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Over on the right.
You think I know this, but it's once I start using this, I don't remember how to do anything.
Right.
Okay.
Thankfully, it's been a while.
No, I mean, it's like I could do this on like the smart board, but on this, I don't know what I'm doing. So general counseling duties, I do what they call the tier 1 counseling. And what that means is that I occasionally do one-to-one counseling, but not on a regular basis. I'll do it on a brief, on a brief time period if there's something going on. And I do small group counseling. I could do that, throughout the year. And I do large group guidance. And I do that with Mr. G. I do Wellness Wednesdays every Wednesday, where I'm in the health class. And if your student has health, they are going to get Wellness Wednesday with me and Mr. G. We're having discussions about these various topics that we might be discussing today. This you don't really need to know about, the MTS. I'm also the attendance designee, which means if your child is going to be absent, we do have a form that is connected on the advisory memo. However, if your child is going to be absent or if they've been absent, if you forgot to send an excuse, please email me, call me, do whatever to get in contact with me, and I will excuse your absence. My only concern is whether or not you knew where your child was. So please do that. I'm the roster chair, which means that I do roster your children in the beginning of the school year. I don't take requests for children to be rostered together. However, sometimes I will consider making changes if kids are rostered with people they don't necessarily get along with. So I will do that. However, if you are concerned that your child is rostered with kids that they don't necessarily know very well, I'm really not keen to make that change. But I will make the change if they are rostered with kids that it will not be a successful situation. That makes sense. I'm the PSSA coordinator, which means I am going to be doing all the logistics around PSSAs. One of the things that parents need to know is if they plan to opt out their child, please contact me ahead of time and send me an email stating that they don't want their child to participate in the PSSAs. And 504 plans. I am the one who creates, renews, and updates 504 plans. So if we are talking about 504 plans at any point, you know, feel free to contact me and ask any questions.
Could you maybe just explain for folks who might be watching the video quickly who aren't familiar with the 504 plan, what a 504 plan is?
A 504 plan is a specialized plan for kids who need they need accommodations based on specific diagnoses. So sometimes with kids who have, various diagnoses that relate to their mental health, such as ADHD, anxiety, depression, sometimes autism even, we are able to create a plan of accommodations to help them, help kids be successful at school and at SLAMS. The thing to really know about the 504 plans is that it's not the same as an IEP. It's based, so an IEP is if a student needs modifications, a change in the curriculum, whereas a 504 plan is the curriculum is fine. It's just that you need some modifications to help, not modifications, accommodations, I'm sorry, to make sure that they can get the needed supports. Okay. And that's the teachers and how they refer themselves to me. But if you ever are feeling that you would like me to meet with your child, all you need to do is just call me, email me, come over and say hi and talk to me. My door is always open. The only day that is tricky for me is on Wednesdays, because that's my Wellness Wednesday day. And I'm usually not back in my office, but for lunch. All right. So there's that. I am thinking that we can do, let me see this one. Now this, hold on one second. I think I'm like way far on this. This is the slideshow that Miss Patterson had found for us last year. She had gone to a training and she found this one to be very useful and was pretty impressed with how this training went and how it was paced, and felt this was a good way for us to touch on the things that we are seeing with our students. Yes.
Charlene, if you could just switch the tab. 'Cause
Oh,
we're not-
sorry. You see the other one. You see this one? Hold on.
No. Yeah, there we go.
There it is. Okay. So it said, understanding the social challenges of youth today. So the issues, well, one of the things is to say, what do you think the top issues kids are facing today? And it's kind of interesting because I felt like when we did this presentation last year, we saw a prevalence of anxiety and depression. And I don't see that either me or Ms. Patterson are seeing those as being the top issues that we're experiencing at SLAMS. Not that they're not there. They are there, but they're not as, I don't think that it's happening as often as before. So starting off with what the top issues are, and this is all research based on when we're talking about middle school students, the top issues being anxiety, depression, bullying, harassment, substance abuse, and perfectionism, academics, peer pressure, sexual activity is not really big on us, safety, and social media. The resources, these are the resources that were being referenced in this study, but anxiety being the big one. So asking the group here, do you feel that kids are more anxious now than they were 10 years ago? Would we agree, yes or no? Hold on one second. Let me see if I can get myself back on the meet. Okay. asking who we have here. Do we think our kids are being more anxious? I'm sorry, I'm just being able to see your faces now.
I mean, I don't know. I didn't have kids 10 years ago, so it's kind of, it's hard for me to tell, but that's what I'm hearing that they are. But I think it depends a lot on the kid and kind of the household. I mean, I think there probably are a lot of factors involved, but and then the anxieties around what? Anxieties around, you know, popularity or schoolwork or, you know, I would imagine there's just like slightly different degrees depending on who the kid is. That's my guess.
And I think the thing is it's very much like how we do Wellness Wednesday. Your guess is right. You know, it's whatever you're experiencing, it's right. You know, and if that's what you're seeing, that exactly is what you're seeing. You know, and I mean, I'm inclined to think that yes, I think it has a lot to do with our age group that we're dealing with right now. The age group is that we're dealing with young adolescents or we're dealing with preteens, and with this age group, the kids think there's a camera on them all the time, and they are very self-conscious, and they very much are looking for peer approval. And sometimes that peer approval is what they're looking for, that before they're looking for parental approval. And what we've always been teaching them, and grown up in like, no, we want our peers to think we're cool. And even in after the fact, when a kid makes like a decision that is not so bright, and we're talking about it later on, and they'll be like, okay, yes, and that's not the best decision I made, but I did it because of this reason or that reason. And even as they're making that decision, they know that this is not like, okay, this is not going to work well. But I think the thing is like that anxiety around fitting in is it's for real, and I think if I was to make my guess, because all I can do is make my guess as well, and now we're starting to get some more research around this. And last year I threw out that idea of reading the Anxious Generation, which is a really good book that explains a lot about what may be some of the reasons. But I do think that technology has a lot to do with it, and it's not the only reason that kids are anxious, but definitely doesn't help. It definitely isn't helping. So I do think that anxiety feels differently for kids now. And I do think that kids feel stressed differently than they've ever done before, where, and I think that there's things that have happened in their lifetime, in their history, that's really brought that on, where we've had different histories. We remember what we were worried about when we were kids. It's not the same thing that kids are worried about, so I do think that as great as it is to have access to not only all of these perspectives, but all this information, kids are getting overloaded and they don't necessarily have a chance to process all that information too, so it is one of those interesting things where I do think with anxiety in particular, if I was going to make my thought on like what might be a good way to help process some of the anxiety, is to have these conversations about what information did you learn today? What did you learn today? Was there anything shocking that you learned today? Was there anything, that made you question things? That kind of thing might be a really good idea at times. All right, I'm going to go back onto the slides. Hopefully I can get back on this. Did I do this right? I did.
Yep.
You got it? Oh, I can do this and like see you guys now. All right. One of the things we do discuss during Wellness Wednesday, how anxiety is normal. Everybody needs it. I talk about, so with kids, we talk about anxiety, stress, as being kind of a similar thing, feeling unrested, or feeling worried. Kind of put it all into the same plane of feelings and like at different levels of intensity. So we do discuss that feeling of being uncomfortable sometimes when you're talking about new things that you never dealt with before, or learning a new skill you never learned before. the different things that feel very hard, you know. In our conversations, we talk about how you need some of this anxiety. You absolutely need it in order for you to grow, because you're never going to grow unless you are slightly uncomfortable. You got to get to that threshold of frustration, you know, got to be slightly frustrated, move over that hump, and then you grow. Little bits and pieces are good. However, if you're dealing with large, unending feelings of unease, that's when the trouble actually happens. That's when we have a lot more difficulty. So temporary is great and harmless. However, if it's ongoing, and the kids, all of our kids, all of, you know, fifth graders, all on, have dealt with a very large collective trauma along with COVID, you know, and even us as grown-ups had a hard time being able to assure the kids, you know, that everything was going to be all right. Because I know when I was back in 2020, I did not know how to say what was going on, you know, or that everything was going to be all right. Because, you know, as a school counselor and my position, I don't like to, like I said, I don't like to tell kids that I can assure them of something when I wasn't sure myself. So we have now our fifth graders who went to kindergarten through COVID, and then first graders, all these, you know, these years, where now I think the kids have experienced something where they know they can't just simply be told that things are going to be all right without actual proof. And I think it's really hard to do that now. I know as parents, it's hard to give assurances now on like what the future holds. And I know with the kids that I talk to here at SLAMS, they are very aware of what goes on in the world and what like the issues are. I do think that the kids have a lot of worry about what the future holds for them, you know, and with that in mind, you know, I do think that our teachers do a very good job at being future focused, about being solutions, you know, and like planning out what can you do? How can we solve this problem and that kind of thing in our small way and that kind of thing. So we do see a lot of that going on when we're doing projects and whatnot. However, you know, that's the little bit we can do in our little SLAMS universe, right? But, you know, the information they're getting out there is, it's a lot, you know? And every now and then I'm hearing things from kids that I didn't know about, you know, and then I got to look it up, Google it, and see. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that this was like a big issue or this is happening and that kind of thing. So kids are, you know, they're not only just going on social media, but they are going on different kinds of, you know, news networks, informational. They're going to science websites a lot, you know, so they're looking at different things and they're worried, you know, and, you know, the best we can do is say like, yeah, you know, absolutely are right to be worried. And we need to validate those feelings, you know, and then you know, ask kids, what do you think we adults should do? You know, ask them, what do they want, you know, us to do? And, you know, that having those dialogues help. So when we're looking at more anxiety in youth, I am seeing, I don't think our kid, like, I think one of the things I have started to think about is the idea of getting stuck. And sometimes we feel our kids are getting, you know, get stuck in their feelings sometimes, in their emotions. I know my daughter, myself, she gets stuck a lot. She's on the spectrum. So she has some very big, like, stuck moments every now and then. And my feeling is to like understand when a student is getting stuck or when your child is getting stuck, the best you can do is just make them comfortable in the moment and wait it out. This is one of those situations where we got to throw the clock out, you know, and not feel like, okay, we got to do this because of this time, blah, 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 this kind of thing. This is where the clock doesn't help, right? We've got to work with whatever our child's inner clock is. And in the moment, think about, is this an absolute non-negotiable thing that we are stuck about? Or is it something that we can actually be flexible about? When we think about kids getting stuck, what we're thinking about as well, or what we should think about, is when kids are getting stuck, it's because they're having difficulty with being flexible in the moment. So the best thing we can do is be flexible, right? So taking a step back, seeing what our child needs, and getting them to a point of feeling like they can unstuck themselves, that's the best we can do at that moment. And maybe they can give 100%, maybe they can give 50% at that moment, you know. But giving kids time is going to be really important when it comes to dealing with those big anxious moments. Anxiety disorders. This is interesting when we are looking at the anxiety disorders. I do think that there's a lot of students who are lately being diagnosed with anxiety, but also depression and also ADHD. And a lot of times it's all coexisting. I am going to say this. I do think that we are experiencing a lot less anxiety since the cell phones have been banned. It has been helping out a lot. So yeah, it is. Not to say that we've been 100% able to like completely police this thing. They knew that we couldn't police this anyways, but at least during the school time, we're not having as many conflicts and as many issues around who's friends and who's not friends, because no one's checking their phone to see whether or not someone has decided not to be their friend at that moment. But, you know, that has been helping. Typically, when we're looking at it, I am seeing at one of the points at the end, untreated children are at higher risk for poor school performance and substance abuse. One of the things is that at our school at SLAMS, because we do have the advisory program and we have the smaller teams, and they have like the 2-year teams, most of the times our teachers are able to catch some differences with the behaviors. So I do feel like we do a pretty good job at catching those, the kids when they feels like there's something just not right, you know. And teachers are very free and very positive, and yeah, they really do have this concern around the kids and making sure that they're okay. So whenever there's anything, like honestly, I've had teachers refer kids to me because someone's too quiet, you know, or, you know, a talkative kid is quiet on a certain day, or someone is, you know, a little irritable, you know, I'll do check-ins on those situations. Oh, we did talk about anxiety and ADHD. They're talking about eating disorders being something that is also co-occurring. I did see that a little bit more on the 8th graders last year, but this year we're at least we're cool around there. But eating disorders is something to really think about now. I don't think they're the easiest things to point out. I get super concerned when I hear kids are not eating lunch at school. You know, for all parents, please, please, please ask your child if they ate lunch when they get home. School lunch is free and available to all students in the school district of Philadelphia, and so is breakfast, you know. If your child is saying that they're just not eating or they don't want to eat, you know, please, you know, figure out whether or not if there's any arrangements we can make, or, you know, or what can be done around that. If, you know, packing a lunch might be the option, but the idea that sometimes some kids don't say they don't want to eat in front of other kids, you know, it's concerning. And that is something that we do need to think about with our students. We do have, when I'm looking at what we're talking about, when it comes to the anxiety disorders, I do think we're starting to see kids who are a lot more sensitized around being in crowds. We do, and I do actually. I do make a lot of accommodations around kids who do not feel like they are comfortable eating or being out in the cafeteria because all the kids are out there. Everyone in their grade is out there at the time. But definitely, that is an area to consider and think about. All right, so we talk about different causes. I mean, you know, there's biological causes, of course, but we do feel like in the recent years that technology has been a big factor when it comes to anxiety. All right, let me just keep on moving on with this COVID and mental health. I'm sorry, we're gonna keep it. Hey, Katie.
I just also think about with social media and or phones, just anxiety levels in kids that aren't sleeping.
Oh man.
I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize that kids this age need 10 hours of sleep. I mean, my child certainly doesn't get it, but for every, the closer she gets to 10, the more reasonable she is, and I think a lot of families don't realize how much they need. We did like sleep studies. We did all this wild stuff. And it's just amazing how much better they feel and can handle all the stressors. So I think a lot of it, and not that kids can't have generalized anxiety disorder, but just amazing, like sleeping and eating. Like you're saying, they're not eating lunch. Is it an eating disorder? Is it the stress? Like what's going on? So I thank you for looking into all of this stuff and dealing with it all.
Oh, sure. So Katie, one of the things I think about when it comes to, so here's a funny bit. Okay. So a lot of the 7th graders and the 6th graders have just finished up they're finishing up their health. If they had health, they either had health in the first quarter, or they had health in the second quarter. And so yesterday, our last meeting we had was around cell phone addiction. And so I'm going to show you, if you don't mind, I'm going to digress really quick because I think this is important to think about.
I would love that. Yes, thank you.
I'm going to digress on 2 areas. First, I'm going to do cell phone addiction. So the kids found this graphic. I found a couple of graphics. The crazy bit is I was just trying to see, I was trying to find graphics around cell phones and mental health. That's all I threw in. I was just wanting graphics. What I ended up doing is, ended up finding when I Googled it, was a whole bunch of services for cell phone addiction and technology addiction, which is a big deal. And I'm not going to lie, that has been something that parents have been talking to me or asking me about. Where do I go? My kid, I think they're addicted to games. They're addicted to their phone, this and that, And the fact of the matter is now you can go anywhere because it looks like this is like a major area of treatment now. So I'm going to see, bear with me. Hopefully I get this right. I'm going to do the cell phone addiction symptoms. The kids found this. Here we go. Is it there? Can you guys see it?
Yep.
Okay, good. So this cell phone symptoms of cell phone addiction, compulsive use, preoccupation, withdrawal symptoms, loss of control, neglecting responsibilities. We talked about how a lot of kids get time blindness around using their phones, where they end up losing time, not understanding that, something was due tomorrow and I planned on working at home and now, this piece isn't going to be done. Or, I had a student talk about like, they forgot to pick up their sister, at school. Things like that have happened, big things. Obviously, the social conflict is a big area where kids are not getting along, or that, around their group chats. So many disturbing group chats are happening. And, it's been a vehicle to like alienate certain students, you know, like sit there and say, well, we're mad at this person now we're mad at this person, you know. And you know, so there's a lot around that. So we were talking about the physical symptoms, sleep disruption, digital eye strain. There are kids, I do believe that sometimes their vision, like maybe they weren't going to be wearing glasses, but now they are wearing glasses because, you know, using their phones all the time. And that's how you're reading everything. It's just, you know, not the most natural way of reading things.
Yeah.
I don't know, have we been talking about the neck and back pain, but have you heard about kids getting, or like actually teens getting the hump, you know, the
Mhm.
back of my chiropractor turned me on to this idea where he said, like, people are using their phones, they're not paying attention to their posture, and they're developing a bit of a hump. Now, the part that the kids found really disturbing, and they all started like going, oh my God, I have this problem, is the phantom phone signals.
Mhm.
So yesterday in our conversation, that I can't imagine, like, I can't even tell you how many kids like told me like, oh my God, I get the phantom buzzing. Like they feel like the vibrations and stuff like that. And then they realize, wait, my phone is in my bag. Why am I feeling vibrations? And it's because, you know, maybe they're using their phone too much. And I have to admit, I get those phantom vibrations too, because I have my phone on vibrate all the time. And that's my vehicle of getting like all my, you know, my contacts and my messages and such. And sometimes I'm like feeling this buzz every now and then. So these are very important things, you know, that kids are recognizing. And like I said, they were very alarmed, you know, when they saw that idea. They're like, phantom phone signals? Is that like, you know, when you get your arm amputated? And I was like, I don't know, maybe it is, you know, similar to that. I wanted to show you guys the thing around here. Oops, hold on. I think I just did the wrong thing. Hold on, let me try this again. I know we're running out of time. I am going to propose that maybe what we should do, maybe in the next year, is probably do topical sessions, possibly in the daytime, because evenings are not the best for us. But now I'm realizing that, you know, this is going very much like Wellness Wednesday does, which is like we run out of time. Let's see. So I was doing the social media piece. All right, here we go. So what we're looking at is, and this is like, this graphic actually shows what we've been doing since, you know, first time we put out our slides back in, you know, back in 2020 when we had to do this virtually, Mr. G and myself. And it talks about the positive and the negative of social media on mental health. And of course, we're talking about increased anxiety, cyberbullying exposure. Big one is distorted body image. I will admit that that's an issue that I've been really worried about with, especially our girls have been really worried sometimes about, like, you know, every now and then I'll have like a breakdown moment, and then it's like, I don't feel very good about myself, or I don't want to wear that, or I feel like somebody said something about it and now I need to cover it. And they're asking me if I have something that they can wear at the time, you know, can I have a sweater, you know, that kind of thing. Because that feeling of being so self-conscious, you know, and feeling upset because, and maybe someone didn't even say anything that bad, but to the, you know, to the child, you know, if it's anything that makes you feel a little different, it's going to feel like monumental, you know. And of course, the sleep disruption that we're talking about, that it is affecting your sleep. And one of the things that came out in our discussion yesterday, a lot of the kids did talk about like how, you know, they sometimes check their phones in the middle of the night, or they're not actually turning their phones off. And so every time they get like a notification, they're checking their notification. They're just so, you know, they're programmed to check that notification. We we had a big conversation about the fact that phones are designed to be this way. They, phones, and smartphones and these companies really do want their phones to be utilized for everything, like that you can't like part with it. And so in speaking about this area, I will say simply the best way that we can help our kids is by modeling healthy relationships with our technology. One of the conversations or one of the things that came up in all 4 of our conversations throughout the day, because we do it like throughout every band. So we had like 2 6th grades and then 2 7th grades. Each band we had one kid, and everybody's like, yeah, that's true. The things that kids are noticing is like, why do our parents want rules for us around this, but they don't actually follow it themselves, So I do think that sometimes it'll be for kids to feel like it's possible to part with the technology. You got to demonstrate how you can part with the technology, So, I've heard, different families have used different ways of like locking the phones away or putting it away for a couple of hours and just have no tech time, whatever it is. But if you're feeling like your child is having difficulty with tech, I would say maybe a possible intervention is to model and demonstrate that you could put your phone away, and and show them what you can do. A big conversation, and I think we're not gonna have a lot of time to talk about much more than but one of the things we did talk about was self-care as well, and what kind of self-care do we do that does not involve tech, and kids did talk about we go for walks. Some kids like to cook, I know that a lot of kids talk about spa day, doing the spa and that kind of thing. Kids absolutely did share that they love having time with their parents. They do, as a lot of the kids do talk about how, what exciting thing they do with their, whether it's baking cookies or going on nature hikes, that there is an enjoyment there that they do like to mention. Biggest thing I thought was really cool was reading actual books, and thinking about this, like, I a lot of kids who talked about maybe even doing a reading time. We do a reading hour at home, and they're reading books, and everyone's reading a book at the same time, once again, that's an area in which you can help your child develop good self-care skills by demonstrating good self-care skills, but perhaps in this area to reduce the help reduce the dependency on cell phones and social media and being on the Chromebook, which we've eliminated it on our end by not sending them home anymore. However, maybe perhaps like sharing self-care with the kids, sharing what there's some things you can do, some things you can't, obviously some things are adult only, but kids will definitely, I think, appreciate that. My last slide, and Katie, this one's for you. I think you might like this one. Do you guys see this?
Okay, my screen. For some reason, my screen just got super small.
Oh.
That's my fault.
I'm like, I'm trying to get it like that I can see everything, but I'm
there we go.
All right.
Yeah, how your exposure to blue light. Yes.
There we go. This is how I do it. Okay, gosh, I hope I remember these functions. So the next time I do a Zoom meeting or a meeting, I know how to do this because I want to see everybody too. So this was a really interesting bit with the blue light, right? you know, and the kids are like, well, you can do a blue light blocker and this and that and everything. But it does look like this is something where, there's some science around this, and this is good for us to know, right? As adults, a lot of us are on screens for long periods of times too. But to think about, kids who are using technology on a constant basis, and we're not, at our school, we're not as dependent on using Chromebooks as we used to be. They don't come out right away, and there's a lot of playing that happens on pen and pencil, beforehand, before things get onto like the Chromebooks and stuff. And I do think that might help a little bit. I think we've got a lot less sleepy kids. But definitely, this is a very interesting graphic. I find it interesting, especially when it comes to, your eye health, and we're not really thinking about what it's doing with your eye health. So at any rate, this is something that we talked about during wellness. Where was, okay. I know we only have like 6 minutes now. I'm going to tie in something with the talk about anxiety, and this is our last bit. And I will go through it really, really fast. Let's see. I'm going to share this tab. Here we are. I got it. I'm going to go to the end. And I want to get to perfectionism. I do think this is when it comes along with anxiety, we do have a lot of kids who are exhibiting a unreasonable, unrealistic expectation about their performances sometimes. I know, you being like, you've all had your conversations with Mr. Boyle. The one big thing that he has been big on and saying is that we really don't want kids to be focused in on grades, like A's, B's, so what ends up happening sometimes is when a student who's normally getting A's, finds they're in a class and they got a B, and the crisis that comes around it, because their feeling is that, wait, what didn't I do? Why didn't I get all these points and this and that? And the overreaction sometimes can be pretty intense, around this. And I do think that conversations around grades, obviously we don't necessarily want to see kids drop down, especially in the 7th grade, to C level, right? But remember, A's and B's still get you into all the top high schools, So, and a thing I do want to point out is that it don't matter if you got all A's or if you got all B's, you're still eligible for all the top high schools, So with that, with that in mind, you're not going to, ruin your future because you got a B instead of an A. Our teachers do everything in their power to make sure kids are getting B's. At least make it to a B, at least meet the expectation, is what the teachers will do to help students out in that area. But I think the thing is, when kids get really super anxious when they're not getting A's everywhere, it is once again, unrealistic expectation, especially in our setting. Our setting is one of those things where you don't always know. We kind of, one of the things that you do need to do a lot more planning if you want to exceed expectation. You got to do a lot more talking to your teachers, and the more you talk to your teachers, but on your own, it's hard to make to constantly get exceeds expectations, you know. So in order to exceed expectations, you really do need to make sure you're checking in. You are talking your projects along the way, you know, and you can't do it alone. You need help, you know, and I think that's one of the things that we do need to encourage our kids to do when, you know, they're talking about something or working on something. It's like, so what's your teacher think about it so far? And if they say, well, I haven't talked to my teacher yet, well, you probably should, you know, like might be the thing to encourage, especially, you know, like it's the aftermath. It's going to be a lot of, you know, upset feelings. This might be the way to go. And I do think that kids, you know, right now are thinking that things are very competitive. But like I said, it's really important to understand that the range to be eligible to these schools is pretty huge, you know. I don't think we have any 8th grade families here. But in case an 8th grade family like watches this recording, I do want to say, yes, tomorrow's going to be a big day. And there's going to be a lot of feelings. I want 8th grade families to know that, you know, so high school selection results are going to come out. This is the initial results, okay? So this is just the beginning of the process. The process continues well into March. So even if your child is on the waiting list for all 5 schools, we found that last year, by the time March came around, everybody had a placement, you know? So it's important to tell your children to be patient and wait. And, you know, whatever. So if you get an offer for your 5th choice, you do want to say you're going to accept it. I've been talking to kids about this. I'm going to talk to all the 8th graders tomorrow about this to make sure that they know to do this, accept whatever you get. And then as long as it is not your, as long, you know, basically, if you get your 5th grade, your 5th ranked choice, you're still in the running for your 1st and 4th, your 1st through 4th. Okay. So that's an important thing. So this is for the people, the 8th graders and the recording, you know, and talk to me if you need to. All right. Well, we're at 8 o'clock now.
Oh, Ms. Blake, thank you so much. This was great to hear, and I also want to give just a shout out to the school for the new cell phone policy this year and the new technology policy this year, and it's great to hear from you how it's bringing anxiety down and bringing disruptions down. And I think for school to be a place where kids get a break from that is a wonderful, not only for what happens in school, but also for just teaching the lesson and demonstrating and having adults demonstrate to them that you can take a break from being on your phone and connected in that way. Oh.
Absolutely. And like I said, a proposal for next year is that maybe we'll do, we could do more topical things.
Yeah.
And maybe perhaps we'll like pick some of the Wellness Wednesday kind of topics. And the only thing is that we'd have to do it during the school day. So if it's possible, if we can do something like that, and, you know, I'm sure that Mr. Boyle can make arrangements for us to get this, you know, a spot where we can do it. And, you know, maybe that will be something that, you know, because obviously neither, like if me and Miss P were here actually together, there was no way we were going to go to like one slide and it would be over, you know. Me on myself, this is, and I say this is how Wellness Wednesday goes. I show one slide, the kids have so much to say about it, and then we just go on with it. But anyway, thank you for having me.
And I know that we also all love hearing that our kids have so much to say, because sometimes when they get home, they have less to say about topics like these. So we're glad that they have good adults to be talking about these issues with.
You know, I am glad for that too. I'm glad for the fact that the kids are, you know, they do have a lot of thoughts about different things. And you know, one of the things I do like tell the kids is whatever you think, especially when it comes to your own life, it's right. You know, it is only, you know. So, you know, so oftentimes we get different perspectives. Kids have different interpretations. It's cool. It's cool. And you know, and one of the things with when we have these discussions, and Mr. G, if you ever get a chance to talk to him, will tell you it gives a chance for every kid to shine. Anybody can be a Wellness Wednesday star, you know. It doesn't like just go for like the top performers. That sometimes it's just kids who just lived life for a while, you know. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you for having me.
So much.
Have a good night.
Absolutely. Have a good night too. And thanks everybody for joining.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Charlene. Thanks, Andrew. Bye all.